All right, so when I'm drawing a plat, the first thing I likely will do is I'll open up my plat here, and I will, and this can be done in Adobe or Acrobat, right? Save as other. Oh, let me open up DC, the professional version. There we go. So I like to export to image and save it as a JPEG. Okay. And I like to do that so that I can bring it into Revit and be able to look at it, right? So I'll have it open on my other screen, but just like in AutoCAD, sometimes it's really nice to be able to copy things, right?
Can you bring in PDFs into Revit?
Well, you probably can. You probably can. We can try. Let's try both. I'm trying to think.
I've never done it. I thought you
In
could.
AutoCAD, you can for sure. Let's just look and see.
That's mostly what I thought you could, is I know you can in AutoCAD.
We'll choose an image, so you can insert from an image. We may be able to insert from file, doing a PDF. Yeah. So I'm going to choose scan 164, hit open. Hopefully it's not, it's probably gigantic. There we go. So I click and I place it. So that brought an image of the plat in. It is gigantic, but that's okay because we're just going to draw a little portion of it. Let's see, Harvard Avenue, and
Those two right there.
here we are right up here. Okay, so it's these two right here. What is that? Okay, so we've got, is there a key on here somewhere? It shows what the lines mean. No. Huh. Okay. So I'm going to assume that the solid lines are property lines. Hopefully that's a good thing to assume, right? And I'm going to assume that these dash lines are public utility easements. So
Would that make it so it is only one lot instead of two, though? Because there's a dotted in between our two lots.
yeah, you're right.
So well, it's got to be the solid ones, though. I don't know.
They could have split it though. They could have.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean?
One lot originally.
It
looking at this, it looks like most of those.
it looks like these are all mostly one lot.
Maybe it was, and they just split it. That would make sense.
I wish I knew what that line meant. I generally a dash line that would be a public utility easement, but oop, these are all dashed though. Oh boy. Well, this is a pretend project, so we'll pretend. It's kind of odd though, I feel like.
I think it's just some kind of a division.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that is where it happens, right?
Yeah,
But
that
it's
one.
still marked as a one lot.
It's just odd because there's so few dotted lines that.
Well, no, now they have two different parcel numbers, 407024 and 407025.
So it's got to be two.
So it has to be two lots. So that must be,
What is 8?
a division line, but then what are solids?
what's that? Say that again.
16, 17.
Oh,
What's that?
Yeah, what are those numbers?
1, 2, 3. It must be just on the block. Like, this is one block, so those are
There
all
some that are.
of the parcels on that block.
It's one parcel number, but it has two.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, number 16 has 2 parcel numbers. So
Number 16, 15, 16.
But then you get some like 17 and 18.
Yeah,
Together
17.
only have one.
So this, I think this should be 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, that's a little bit odd.
Confusing. That's.
I mean, it could be that maybe there was a little like was there an alley between here at some point or something? No, that's the alley. Is that an alley or a through street? But this appears to be where the property boundary is now because they have a house here and then they have another house right here. And we have two different parcel numbers. 24, 23, 24, 25. Huh. They could have split it at some point. Interesting. But this one Maybe they were combined at some point. They were combined and then split, because these are all sort of dashed off as well.
And these papers are quite old, aren't they?
I don't know. I think it depends. I don't think they're that old.
He was talking to us, I can't remember what he said.
2017.
He said something, he's like, he had a more zoomed in, different kind of paper. He's like, it's a little bit old.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, how old? He said 1906.
Oh.
Like, let's go with the black.
Let's go with the newer one. Yeah, let's go with the newer one.
Yeah, he said 1906. I was like, is it chipped into stone? Like,
It's hand drawn. It's hand drawn.
so I don't know how old this is, but just when he said that, I was like, are plats really old? Like,
No, not all of them.
okay.
This one is fairly new. This is about a year
never
old.
mind, okay.
Yeah, that's a year old.
Way after 1906.
We could call the county again. I'm suspecting, since they built over here, I'm suspecting that they've split their lot. That's what I suspect. But I wish there were a key on here to see what all of the different line types meant. So,
Because some of the placements of dotted lines don't make a whole lot of sense.
well, and I think that a lot of those are like public utilities, right?
Okay.
And some of the public utilities, I think those are old. Like, sometimes there used to be an alley behind a house, and so it shows a public utility easement, but the alley was assumed, and so it's not there anymore. But that's, yeah, so it's a little bit odd, but we'll just go with it for our purposes. Because in general, when you see that, it's going to be a public utility easement. So I would say that between these two properties, there's a public utility easement. And I would say it looks like there was one here as well, but at some point it looks like the lot was split. That's what it kind of looks like to me. So I think maybe we'll just go with that for now, because these over here, the property lines match up here. That's a utility easement. That's a utility easement.
The thing is, when you look at Google Maps, there's a house right on utility easement.
On here,
Yeah.
isn't there a garage or something right here?
Yeah.
Yes, but
Yeah.
on the lot above, on number 17, like right where the easement, utility easement is, there's a house there.
Oh, I thought the house was right here. It's not right here.
And
There is, but then there's a garage right on that, because it's got that drive-through garage.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, I mean, the thing is that they could have built that garage later, but there's still an easement there. So if public utilities has to come through, then,
Yeah.
Who knows when it was built, or if it was built legally, or what happened, But I think that these are the property lines, these solid lines, because they all match up on the blocks. And then these dashed lines are public utility easements. This one's just a little odd because it's been split. We have two parcel numbers, so I think it's just been split, essentially. And then we have an easement between those two. Maybe that was just formed, right? Between the two new lots at some point. So we'll just call it that. So we're going to draw this, and I think we need to draw we need to draw our lot for sure, but then we need to draw a good surrounding area for this. And I think if we do, let's just do like 5 in either direction. So if this is our lot, we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. We'll do 5 back here, and we'll do 4 above it. So let's just get kind of like this little area drawn, okay? And I want you to show the property lines. I want you to show the public utility easements, and I want you to label the streets. So this is Harvard Avenue. What is this one? This is Denver Street, and this one is 400 East, right? So I would say that a good kind of little vicinity map would just kind of be, this little surrounding area here. So you're going to draw all of those, which I don't think will be that difficult. So these plats, they don't look like a survey, but they kind of are, right? A survey is going to show property lines with bearings, essentially, like the north, south, east, west bearings, right? So it'll be really precise. It'll also show things like vegetation or flower beds or the placement of the house on there, that kind of thing. So the plat is really just going to show basic property lines and lengths. So this is a little bit hard to read. So it looks like you're probably going to have to just draw it and see where all of the dimensions kind of flesh out, right? So this is 39.2, so that 39.2 looks pretty good. 33, 33, and these are feet, right? So we've got 39.20 from here to here, it looks like 33 feet from here to here. And then, I don't think so. I think that's something, do you think it's 50?
Or maybe all of them are 33.
37. Yeah, I think that's probably a better assumption. Yeah, we'll scale it and just make sure that they're all the same, right? So the most important thing is that we get our lot correct, and then we'll just draw the others the best that we can, essentially. So yeah, 33, maybe you're right, 33, they're all 33 all the way up. And then it looks like we have a length of 148.5 here. These ones are longer, 181.5, split up into 106.5 and 75 feet, right? That sort of makes sense. So I think the first thing that I'm probably going to do, so I brought my image in here, right, because I want to use it to help me draw my site plan. I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it, right? So let me show you how to scale these in Revit, because I think it's going to be really helpful. So I'm going to go over to Annotate, and I'm going to draw a detail line. And I'm going to choose probably a wide line so that I can see it. And I'm going to get as close as I can to getting the correct length of this property, right? So I think we're going to go all the way out to here. And I kind of go to the midpoint of lines. You see that I'm not completely straight, but I think that's okay. I'm going to go to the midpoint of the lines. So there's my first line. TL, thin lines, TL. Okay. So I have a line here that references the length as it currently exists, right? And now I'm going to draw another one of those lines just kind of below it here. And I'm going to draw it at this length. So 181.50. Oh no, that's right. 50 foot. Oh, looks like, yeah, that looks like it actually came into scale. That's good. All right, so let's just pretend that didn't work, and there you go, 6 inches. So I'll show you how I would have scaled it, right, if that were the case. So I would grab, that was magic. I like that. I would grab my plat map and I would grab my line here, and I would come up here and I'd click on scale. Scale is really easy in Revit, but I think that a lot of times people forget how to use it, funny enough. So let me show you off to the side actually how it works. First, I'm going to draw a detail line. So I drew this at 248 feet, right? If I wanted to scale it up and make it 300 feet, right? In AutoCAD, it's somewhat of a process to do that. But in Revit, I would select the line and I would pick scale. And the first thing, so I want it to be a graphic scale, meaning I'm going to do it graphically on the screen. I'm going to click once. I'm going to measure that line, click. So I've established how long the current length is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in what I want it to be, 350. And it bumps up to 350. So I essentially
grabbed other things that was scaled in the same.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so easy.
AutoCAD gonna get graphics.
I know, right? Isn't that easy? In AutoCAD, you have to use. You can do it in CAD. Yeah. It's just not that easy. It's a couple more steps.
Don't you have to like go to like a conversion table?
No, you can type in a number. You could type in like scale by 4.5 and it would work.
That's the thing is you usually have to figure out what your ratio is though. You have to figure out.
Or you have to use a line, ALIGN. Yeah. So one of those two. So you can do the exact same thing in AutoCAD, but it's just not as easy, right?
That
So
was very slick and simple.
super easy. So, and actually I really kind of think this is exactly, it is. It's the same. What's that?
I think I figured out the dashed lines.
Yeah?
Yeah, because every lot you look and compared to the dashed lines, there's like a little road within the lot, like a passage through or whatever.
An easement, basic. Yeah, an easement.
Like a driveway or something.
So it's an easement of some sort, right? Then, if there's a road on it, yeah, it's an easement. I think that makes sense. So that I'm gonna undo that real quick. You saw that line. This image came into scale, which is like hardly ever the case, right?
Is it exactly?
Yeah.
There's no way you got that.
Yeah.
6 inch difference.
Oh, you're off by 6 inches.
Oh, am I off by 6 inches? Oh, okay, we'll do it then. You were right. I thought you were joking.
I was gonna say, like, there's no way you nailed it perfectly.
Well, it wasn't me. And that's probably just because I didn't quite go to the edge of the boundary, honestly. So I'm going to grab my plat. I'm going to grab that line, right? And actually, I guess I don't really even need this one. I did it because I'm used to doing it, but I already know the length, right? So if I didn't know the length, that would be more of a practice if I didn't know the length, right? I was trying to align two things, but I didn't know the length, and I wanted to align one unknown length to another known length. But in this case, I already know it. So I'm just going to click on scale and click here, click there, and we'll do 181.5 and slightly scaled it. 181.5. Okay, so that was easy. All right, so now it's just a matter of tracing it, essentially. And I think there's two ways you can go about tracing this plat in Revit. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to drag this down near this little area here. This is our little lot here, and I'm dragging it sort of in between these lines here, right? You see my elevation markers, just so that my piece of property is somewhat in between those elevation markers. I'm going to turn off these little, for now, we're going to turn those off, and we will talk about them a little bit later. Okay, so I have my plat and it's scaled, and I put it inside of these little elevation markers, right? Now it's time for me to draw it. And I think there's two ways we can go about drawing this. And any plat or site plan in general, you can draw it using actual, quote, property lines in Revit. So we'll use the property line tool and we'll create property lines. And I usually kind of take this route, just because it's a little bit more generic, and with a plat we have somewhat generic information, kind of, right? You could also draw it using detail lines, right? So if I wanted to draw this using detail lines, so I'll show you both ways. I need to create a new line type first. I need to create a property line detail line type. If I go to annotate, I click on detail line, we have kind of the basic lines here, right? And I don't have the line type I need, because the property line is going to be like a dash dot or dash dash dot type designation. So here's a little bit of Revit customization, right? How to add a new line type. I'm going to come over here to manage, and I'm going to click on additional settings, and I'm going to click on line styles. And all of the lines that currently exist in Revit are here. So I can see hidden, overhead, room separation, right? All of these lines, in addition to all of the detail lines. So to create a new line, I'm just going to click on new, and I'm going to call it property line, and I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to give it a thickness. So the bigger the number, the thicker the line. Property lines want to be fairly thick. And it's going to be a black colored line, and I want to change the pattern to dash dot. Apply that, hit OK, and I just created my new property line type. If I go back over to annotate and I go to detail line now, you're going to see property line is in my menu, right? So if I click on property line, it looks like that. TL thin lines, TL. I think I maybe wanted a little thicker, so I'm going to go back to manage, additional settings, line styles, open that up. I'm going to go down to my property line. Let's make it, I was originally going to do it 8. Let's do it an 8 and apply that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to go back to property line again, dash dot. Maybe I'll try doing a different scale, apply that. There we go. So it's, the pattern's a little tighter. Okay. So that's what my property line looks like now. Okay. So this is going to be kind of the generic method of doing this. And when I don't have a proper survey, for me, it doesn't, I mean, I guess it's bad to say don't use the property line tool. You can use it, it's just fine, right? But this is just an easier way when I'm kind of just drawing an architectural site plan here. So I go to annotate. I'm going to come over here to detail line. I've got property line here, and I'm really just going to draw, right? So I have my first boundary here, which is 181.5. I create that. I start moving in this direction, right? 39.2, enter. What's that?
It's not 90 degrees.
You went at an angle there.
Oh, did I? Okay, let's fix that. Did I? Yes, I did. There we go. I want to use that line again, so I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to choose Create Similar. And it will reinitiate that line type. Right? And 181.50. And I'm going to come down and connect it. Trim that. There we go. Okay. So now if I turn my plat off, I'm going to click on my plat, come down here, use my little sunglasses, hide element for a second, then I have my property boundary, essentially. Okay. I'm going to turn that back on. And then you would just go about, right? I think these are, it's adequate to say these are 33, right? The next thing I would do is start drawing these public utility easements, right? Or whatever type, transportation easement. It's some type of easement, right? The dashed line is some type of easement. So these are definitely two separate plots, but we don't have a property boundary, which is kind of odd. Anyway, maybe it's the same people that still own it, but they had enough property to build again. So I don't know. It's kind of odd. All right, so what I do now is if you wanted to keep everything very separate, you could create a new line type and call it PUE, public utility easement, or setback, or zoning setback, or something else to kind of designate it from your other line types, right? Although if I go into annotate detail line, I do have I like to use the demo line. I know it's cheating, but it's a little bit of a tighter dash than the actual hidden line. So the next thing I'm going to do here, so 7581, it looks like this public utility easement is 75 feet from this back line, right? And I don't really, let's see, 75 foot. There we go. Oh, pretty close, right? 75 foot. There we go. Okay. And I kind of just going to drag it down to here. I don't exactly know this spacing, but I'm going to measure it and kind of get it as close as I can, right? For a project like this, and I'm being precise, but I'm not being like survey precise, right? But I think that for a project like this, where it's in the city, it has an established boundary, there's sidewalks around it, right? There's fence lines along here. You can go and get a plat, and it very clearly shows the lines. Usually Salt Lake City is pretty okay with this type of drawing, right? If you're somewhere else and it's maybe a blank piece of lot, a blank lot, the boundary between the neighbor and the new lot are not necessarily well defined, right? Or you have to be very specific about being not too close to the property line, like, everything is very tight and needs to be verified, then they may want a survey and they may want it more precise, right? But I think just for this kind of project where everything is very well established, there's not a whole lot of variable, they're pretty okay with this kind of thing. All right, so I'm going to measure this real quick. And we'll just, what did you say? 9.5? Oh, it's almost 11. I like to have nice even numbers, right? So I'm going to go back to, it's just kind of a puzzle. Annotate, and I'm going to go back to detail line, which is actually DL, detail line, and demo, and I'm going to choose my pick, and we'll do 11-foot offset, and that looks pretty good. So I have an 11-foot easement right there, right? So that looks pretty good. The next thing I would just continue drawing on. So you have a few that you're going to draw, right? I would do 5 up here, 5 here, I would do 5 here, and 5 here, and then I want to see the streets labeled, and I think that will be adequate for what we need to do. All right, so here is our site plan. I'm going to freeze visually turn off the plat for a minute. I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to come down to my sunglasses and choose hide element. And looks pretty good there, right? This would likely just continue on, so we'll just bring it up a little bit here. Actually, I'm going to do another line. Create similar. There we go, looks good. There we go, looks good. Okay. All right, so we have our piece of property, and you could draw everything else since you're kind of in, in that mode. But what I want to do next is I want to start applying some of our zoning requirements to this, okay? So the first thing, and I'm just going to try and remember it, the first thing I remember is that we have a 10-foot offset from the front of the property, right? So using a detail line, and I'm going to use maybe a hidden line to do this, and a pick. I'm going to type 10 foot for my offset. Okay, so it looks tiny, doesn't it? So there's my 10-foot offset, and this is going to be consistent through all the other properties. So there's my first easement, right? 10 foot. My next one, if I remember right, it was 4 foot from this side, so we have another 4-foot easement there. And we have, what is it, 20 feet or the average of the block in the back? So we'll just say 20 feet to be, you can figure it out, but to be conservative today, we'll say we have 20 feet there. And then we have another 4-foot easement happening right here, so we'll change that to 4, and we'll just draw our last line right there, essentially. I know, look at all that property you can't use, right? The man. All right, so there's our property line, and you're going to apply all of the different restrictions that, the city is requiring. And, one thing I forgot to do that I probably should do is I'm actually going to draw a quick filled region over the top of this, and I will tell you why. Invisible. We'll do thin lines, that's okay. Before I go any further, I want to actually make sure that this lot is the size it should be, if that makes sense. So I'm going to create a filled region, and if I click on the filled region, it tells me the square footage of that lot, right? So I have 7,095 square feet, and we'll just do a little experiment, right? 41, ooh, they were under the zoning requirement, it looks like, when they built, right? 100 years ago, probably. But I just kind of like to verify things, right? And kind of make sure that what we have here is what we need. I should have, when I drew this filled region, I should have done something a little different, because I kind of like that crosshatch for maybe a vicinity map showing, hey, here's our lot, We can turn it on and off if we need to. But I'm going to change this to an invisible line. And I'm going to give it like a 1-inch offset. Oh. And I'm going to, you see how it is just kind of to the inside of that property line? Let's do a 3-inch offset. There we go. So that invisible line just sits to the inside of the property line. You see that? It doesn't encroach on it. And I hit finish. And now that diagonal crosshatch just sits really nicely inside of that property line, right? So I click on it and slightly lower square footage now because I slightly inset it. But now if I were to draw like a vicinity map and wanted to indicate my property, right, which we will have to do, then the crosshatch will indicate my property. Okay, so I think this is going to be a pretty good start for your preliminary site plan. Of course, you're going to have to draw all the stuff around it, right? You're going to create 2 different site plans, though. You're going to create a vicinity map, and you're going to create a plot of just our property line, okay? So when you have finished drawing everything, I would come over here, and I would right-click, and I would duplicate view with detailing. And I would name one site, and we'll call this maybe something like project site. And I would right click on this one and I would choose rename, and I would call this site vicinity map. Okay, the difference between the two, this is just it's the same architectural site plan, right? But this one is just really going to focus on our plot plan. It's going to be a larger scale so that we can see it. This one is going to be a vicinity map, so it's going to zoom out and it's just going to show the context of our plot, okay? But I think this is enough right now that you could really start kind of planning for our project, essentially, right? Sometimes, I'm not going to do that right now because I have it very nicely spaced an inch away from the property line. But you could probably create another area right here, another filled region, and just take a look at actually how much property you have now to build on, right? And you're probably as well going to be putting some text next to this, and you're going to be noting things, right? So if it were me and I were working on this project, I would create some notes over here, right? Some project notes, and I would say, one, the square foot of the site is equal to this. Number two, that means that if I have the square footage of the site, times that by 0.40, 40%, and I start to get an idea of what my buildable area is going to be, right? So if that's 6,000 square feet, right, then you'll be able to figure out how many townhomes you can have and how big they can be or whatever, right? So you're going to start doing some math and figuring out how much of the site is buildable, where all of your restrictions are. You're getting it drawn, right? You're labeling everything. So I think the next thing you'll want to do here is you'll want to label it. So using the text tool, you're going to put, how long this property line is. 180.6 foot, right? Something to that effect. And then you'll label everything else. And I would probably put the parcel number on here as well. So if we unfreeze, if we reset that, right, wireframe WF, I can see my parcel number is 407025. Let's just use that one for this. We'll just say it's one piece of property, right? 407025. And then you'll start kind of indicating where everything is, okay? And for now, I think that's just fine. So for your assignment, you have an assignment. Let's go back to here. Oh, I bet it came through. Okay, let's go to assignments. Okay, so your preliminary site plan, which I'm going to publish right now, it's going to be due on the 16th, which is Sunday at midnight. I got smart on that one. Huh? And we're going to look at them. We look at everything. But essentially, that's going to be to the level that I want to see for your preliminary site plan, right? So draw the following items, draw the property boundaries, draw the setbacks, any easements, sidewalks. That's a pretty important thing. So you're going to have to probably guess a little bit on the sidewalks. Use Google Maps. Yeah, use Google Maps to kind of figure out where the sidewalks are, right? And then I want you to make sure that you label everything, right? So everything looks pretty good. I put some examples of site plans here. Let me remember which ones these are. Oh yeah, so this is actually a project that has been built not very far away from our project, and this is kind of the extent of their site plan, right? So it's a little bit blurry, but you can see their property lines, you can see their house. They've got a code review over here, which we'll talk about in a few weeks, I think, or maybe next week. They're showing their driveway, which we're not going to show just yet. We're not quite there yet. But this is the extent of their site plan. And it's like a mystery. Which one do I have next? Here is another. This one's kind of out in the boonies. This is an imbue project. But this is the extent of their site plan, essentially, right? This was an unbuilt project, so I don't think they quite finished the drawings, but you see their property line, you kind of see the limits of disturbance for their property lines, you're seeing vegetation, you're seeing a survey, it looks like they actually had the property surveyed, you're seeing their entry road in here, right? But fairly simple, north arrow, it's always good to have on your site plan. And then I think I put this one, yes. So this was one that I worked on, and this is in the city. This one was for Salt Lake City. So it was actually kind of complicated. It was a new build on a blank site. But I think the main things to note, we had a survey, of course, which we don't have here. But we're going to be showing property lines. We're going to be showing setbacks here. We're going to be showing easements, right? All of that good stuff. Where the buildings are located, right? So this is kind of probably where we'll end up. But for now, I think that getting your site plan to this level would be a really good idea, okay? I've got this scaled at 1 to 20. I don't know if that is going to be adequate, but I'm going to create a new sheet. Let's see, 22 by 34. And I'm going to pull my little site plan onto it. Looks pretty pretty good. Once yours gets a little bigger, you might have to change the scale, right? But create a sheet, and let's call it, you know, for now, preliminary site plan. And we'll call it AS 101, Architectural Site Plan 101. Okay. Sound pretty good for the site plan? Not terrible, right? Now, the other direction we could have gone with the site plan is we could have used property lines. And if I go to massing and site here, all of my site tools, like proper site tools, are located under this tab, right? And I think maybe I'll give you guys a 3D survey just so that you can see how these tools work. Maybe we'll demonstrate that when we do the actual site plan, like the final site plan, so that I can show you how to do a topo surface using a DWG file that you get from a survey, right? But all of the proper site tools are going to be located here. So how to create a topo surface, site components, parking components, and property lines, right? I doubt we have a lot of topography on this site, meaning it's probably very, very flat at this point, right? There's not going to be any slope. So we don't have a lot that we have to do with the site, although I think I think we will create a topo surface. But if I wanted to create a property line, an actual property line, I could do that with this tab. Now, the advantages to using an actual property line, property lines are actually objects in Revit, okay? And what makes that kind of nice is that I can keynote them. So keynotes recognize property lines as objects, okay? So that's pretty nice. So when I go to keynote these, that makes a lot of sense, okay? If I click on property line, I have two different ways of going about creating property lines. I can sketch it, which is very similar to what we did here. And I can
just trace over what you did?
Yes, yeah, you could. So if you wanted to kind of sketch it using actual property lines, that's great. You can do that by creating a sketch, right? So essentially you would just be drawing, we'll just draw something here. Finish. And it builds in the pattern, right? And then that object is known as a property line, okay? It gives you the area of the property, it gives you the boundary, all that good stuff. And I can tag it, right? Like I said, I can keynote it, and Revit recognizes it as an object. So that's really great, okay? I'm gonna delete that. This, and we don't, excuse me, we don't have a property or a survey. But the other way that you could create property lines is using bearings and distances. So nightmares back to AutoCAD, right? I know. But essentially what you would do is this is kind of the same syntax that AutoCAD had, right? You would enter a distance, 181.40, at north, 81 degrees, 15 minutes, 17 seconds east. I know, you're like, I don't want to. Right. See, and that's kind of why I just did it the way I did it.
I like to
right?
that.
I know. This is a lot more, it makes a lot more sense, I feel like, though, right? This is easier to input, I feel like. Maybe.
Easier than what?
Than having to like look at the AutoCAD command line and
Easier
hope,
than AutoCAD?
yeah,
Totally.
hope you
Easier
got
than
it right.
drawing them? I think not even close. So
Right.
Drawing them is
Just
so much
simple,
easier.
very simple.
It's
And
intuitive.
it
That's
is. And when you get I don't, honestly, I've never used this feature because even when I have a survey, the survey has the bearing lines already drawn in AutoCAD. So I bring the AutoCAD file into Revit and then I trace over that. So I don't even use this because I just don't want to. But you could, right? You could. And it works I've used it maybe once. So you enter all the bearings and then you hit insert. You're going to add all of the different property lines at the same time in sequence. And then it just generates the shape that then you click and you place it, essentially. So whatever way you want to do it, again, I kind of, Revit's complicated enough. I just try and keep it really simple, right? Okay, so that's going to be our couple of different ways to create our property boundary. Like I said, just draw 5 all the way around. Make sure you label everything, right? You don't need to label all the dimensions on these individual sites, but put their parcel number on there so that we can tell them apart. I want the streets labeled, and I think that will do for the preliminary site plan, okay? I think, of course, we're going to have to create a demo plan. We'll have to place the existing house on there, but we're not quite there yet. Okay, any questions on that? Not too bad. Okay, I'm going to stop our video here.